and we are struggling that we always do, which is good. So that means that we are live. We're live. Yes, we're live. Nice. All right. All right. A little bit better. Yes, and I think just that bit. That's good. That's good. One of a few times that we are not so good because I'm displaying my chat. Sorry. No, not this one. Alright, guys. Today we're having a very interesting, as I always say, very interesting day. Night, also. You can actually see it like that too. Welcome to this live session of A-létheia and the Speak Up Club. We are about to finish fixing the people from Instagram. So we got the both of our platforms, the ones that we constantly use for these live sessions, working in unison. And I hope you guys are doing all right. We're still connecting. Well, in the meantime, to make an introduction, these last live sessions have been a series of analysis commentary based on the different recommendations that we have made to our audience in terms of what they can read to help them go through so many different things that are really interesting for us to understand, because fiction has an interesting aspect to teach to all of us about life, different than what you would get by, I don't know, watching the news or reading documentaries, and understanding today that we live in the world of, in the age of communication, in the age of knowledge, and we are so disavowed with reality because we are victims of many different ways, many different people trying to manipulate information. All the information that you get has something extra. It's a little bit of a law of the more for less and less for more, and understanding that this is one of those things, that understanding Slavoj Žižek's philosophy is evidence of the ideology that is predominant in today's media, predominant in today's reality, because media is just that, a reflect of reality. So good thing is that we actually see that there are authors that are out there that are producing content that is worth watching and worth understanding, and specifically in the way or manner in which you have the opportunity to, let's say, perceive that a particular type of reality that they sell, because obviously it's a sell, that they sell you, right, in the product that they are managed to put out there for you to consume. If the product is a movie, well, there. If the product is comics, well, there too. So we thank you. It's live already. Take advantage of that for the volume. Yes. And we're going live also on Instagram. So now we're both working perfectly in unison. Instagram, and oh my god, Instagram is falling down. I think that way. Okay, I know what I can do to fix Instagram, because Instagram is tilting to one side. But now Instagram is a little bit more stable. Hopefully. There we go. Instagram is good. No, it's not. It's good now. And this makes me sweaty, as I can see. Woo! Welcome people from Instagram. And let's continue. We are speaking about stories and specifically about MC's stories that we recommend for you to check out because they're really interesting. In which there is a pattern in the personality of each one of these MCs, and this personality pattern is has been brought up to our attention because we all have sometimes this type of problems. Okay, so it is a prototype of MC that is possibly one of the most realistic types. Um, at the same time, one of the most unnerving and angry types too, because possibly because he hits really close home, because you might actually understand how it feels to be in that position. So the stories that we're gonna be speaking about are in the following order. We have Jagaaaan, we have Unordinary, we have Shamo, and we are going to be commenting just that little bit of Eren Jaeger from Attack on Titan. Not so much on Attack on Titan, but mostly on Eren Jaeger because we already have spoken about that story here in the channel. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, what do I mean by the title that you guys can see about Misplaced Desire and Jagaaaan, for instance, and all the others, right? So, starting from the beginning. Slavoj Žižek, I did mention him at the beginning of the video, mentions in the beginning of his documentary film, A Pervert's Guide to Cinema, that human beings are incapable, I'm not quoting word by word, but I'm paraphrasing, are incapable of knowing what to desire. Human beings don't know what to desire. So cinema is there to show them what to desire and how to desire. Cinema makes sure that the images that they portray convey a particular type of idea that is bought by the audience without really the audience acknowledging it. Because again, that's part of what ideology is supposed to be. There are concepts that are being transmitted in language that is coded in every movie was because we know that now it's more than just movies, but that was coded in every movie that will allow people have access to a way of desiring. Okay, so of course we know that this is the generation of people that came were raised with cinema as the form for them to connect to society, because you connect to society in your family, in your household, and in your household cinema was for a time a specific a, what you call that, generation, but I don't want to just say generation, just demographics mostly, that is connected to generations, in which people were basically, brought up by family get-togethers, and at the same time a TV showing a particular set of movies that were programmed according to the time, right? Obviously, we speak about current generations. We have video game is the most dominant media for showing ideology, and then after video game, you have, of course, things like manga and anime and comics in general. So we know that there's a lot of stuff that is really not worthy of your time. I mean, if you want to actually consider like, this is serious matter, because in reality, no, it is entertainment. We have to be completely honest about the whole objective of what manga, anime, comic books, etc., are meant to be. They are simply entertainment. But this has not really changed from what it was philosophy back then. Back then, entertainment was actually thinking, because the majority of people, regular people, had to deal with much more difficult things to, you know, to complete in their lives. And I mean by this, as you have, for example, the whole situation of survival, right? The whole situation of finding food, finding shelter, not being murdered by bandits, or simply just not being involved in wars or in famines, or etc., etc., etc. All those things that were really popular back in different times in history, all the history that we have lived in this planet. In reality, it's been like that. Um, but philosophy, thinking, having the chance to actually consider a different reality, considering different options, that was basically for those that were privileged to have, all the other things sorted out, as they never really had to think so much about food, they never had to think about so much about work, income, etc., etc. They had the chance to relax, look at, I don't know, stare at the horizon, and think about the meaning of life, right? And the meaning of those things that they consider were important for them, and those things that were considered important for the next generations, for them as a legacy to leave behind. So we know that this they did because they had the chance of entertaining themselves into this type of thinking. Of course, much more rigorous thinking, that silly way of thinking, and we know that we are 100% capable of doing that, and we know that throughout history that actually existed too. But philosophy in itself began mostly not just simply as a virtuous act. It was basically entertaining, a type of entertainment for that type of people. And we all know that. Hello, Miguel. What's up, man? Welcome, welcome. And close to your birthday, right? Hope you have a good time there. So of course you got a, at that time it was philosophy, and it was arts, and arts, like different types. It's mostly theater, and theater and philosophy both connected in many different ways. We'll know how Plato dedicated lots of his time and commenting, right, working about, and Aristotle too, about what it was done back then in Greece, with theater, and we have that with other different type of arts that had philosophical thought to them, and this philosophical thought was always appreciated because that made art better than just simply the experience of being checking art out, right? Um, they just replied. Can you mute it? In the chat, you click on mute. It mutes. Alright, so continue on what I was referring to. When we go again, after many years throughout history, we know that arts kept doing that, right? Kept being a form in which a certain type of thought was entertained. Okay, philosophers kept working. Yes, 2,000 years after Jesus, they kept working on philosophy and all the traditional growth that was experimented at the academy, but they were filtered constantly to different forms of arts. Some of them were supporting a particular type of way of seeing, and others were disruptives, you can think of, maybe. And the reasons why there needed to be changes, cultural changes throughout history. We can say that, for example, we owe a lot to philosophy, to stuff like, for example, let's say, um, the French Revolution. And if it weren't for the French Revolution, you wouldn't have situations like, for example, independence movements. You wouldn't have the birth of nations that came out of the independent movements, such as Ecuador, such as Venezuela, and many others. So we are speaking about situations that, yeah, I mean, you can trail back philosophy to this. We are not actually saying that with comics you read philosophy, because that's not true. Philosophy still is philosophy, but you can find great philosophical content in good stories, in comics, in manga. Particularly that concept, continuing on the idea of Zizek and his portrayal of that situation of desire and our problem with it. That idea that some characters, main characters, have of not really understanding the drive they have, simply just going, you know, as they say, balls deep, 100% forward, not sorry, disregarding any type of without any type of consideration to whatever happens around them. And we actually have to consider the type of stories that these characters were, I am referring to. So, big division first from the beginning. We have shonen characters and we have seinen characters. For those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, shonen characters in manga, specifically Japanese manga, are the typical or stereotypical superhero in the most cartoonish type of stories, the ones that are mostly for young people. I have a friend in Japan that told me that even the language is different. The way in which the language, the difficulty of the language for shonen stories are different than the ones from seinen stories, that are the ones that we are referring to about today. So shonen stories are for kids. Kids, grade school time, um, uh, let's say middle school, right? That's more or less the range in which these stories are meant to be. And of course, the level of clarity of the main character in terms of, describing what is that, what drives them, is right there up front, in your face. They basically, in the very first chapter of each one of these stories, they tell you what is it that they want. Alright, just starting off with one of the last shonen, big shonens that we mentioned in this channel. We're speaking about, of course, One Piece and Luffy. The very first chapter, the things that he says, that thing that he wants to become, the king of the pirates, right? It's really clear. You see, let's say, the situation with My Hero Academy and Deku becoming the best hero ever, and you see the same thing. Sorry, give me a second. Oh, okay. We're gonna have to make a pause with the people of Instagram. I'm really sorry, but we're gonna be back. So stay tuned. We are live in YouTube as well. So just a little pause. Here we go. Here we go. Got the phone. All right. Continue with what I was referring to just before. Um, then these characters that we are speaking about, I mentioned Deku and I mentioned Luffy. I mentioned, let's say, Naruto, not another huge shonen character that from the very beginning says that he wants to be Hokage, right? The kind of like the president representative of his village. You got so on many different stories. I don't know, let's say Goku by becoming the best warrior. Um, you got in Dragon Ball, you got Saint Seiya by becoming a gold representative. you know, it is traceable even that a story like this will show a clear objective from the very beginning for kids to look forward to that particular type of development as the main reason for what the story is supposed to be attractive as. The whole plot from the beginning sells the idea of entertaining. You can see that in the case of the pirate world for One Piece, the ninja world for Naruto, the superhero world for the case of My Hero Academy, and so on with all the others. In Seinen, on the other hand, as it's supposed to represent a clear advance on the way in which kids progress throughout time. I mean, you you stop being a kid, you become a teenager, and as you become a teenager, hormones and of course, you got other urges, other needs, other things that you care for. My friend from Japan was telling me that, yeah, the difference between the shonen and the seinen and all the others as they keep on going with different niche markets was basically how the language changed, and it changes quite a lot in the seinen stories. They're supposed to have much more complexity of terminology, concepts, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, interesting factor that if you are learning a language, reading in that language will definitely make you get that language faster. So Japanese, Korean, Chinese, for manga, manhwa, and manhwa, you guys have that chance if you're interested in learning that language. Now, here in A-létheia, our focus is mostly mastering specifically English. So we go from a range of ESL, and that's the reason why we recommend reading as one of the main ways for ESL students to get their vocabulary straight. The problem is, what is it that you can read that will give you the most? And of course, you have everything for reading. We're not really saying that the best thing that you need to read is manga, but if you want this type of entertainment, you got this particular type of connection to do with the manga, manhwa, and so on. We have really interesting stories, really complex characters that will make us want to be hooked to another story right after we finish with the first, because it's not just enough. It always goes like this. Okay, so let's begin with, in this case, the first one. We go with Jagaaaan or Jag, right? I don't know if I'm butchering the name properly because it's Japanese, but it's romanized. So, hey, it may be Jagaaaan or Jag. So, this story, let's go to the way much more responsible for us to work on, and we go to the basics. Of course, I took my time to Wikipedia all of the stories that I wanted to speak about tonight. We got Jagaaaan as being a Japanese manga series written by Muneyuki Kaneshiro and illustrated by Kensuke Nishida. Now, alright, this is the continuation, right? New life. Alright, so we're back in Instagram. We were off for a little bit, but we're now back on Instagram. Thank you, people, for the loyal people that are going to be checking this later on. So, continuing. Jagaaaan. This story was from Becoming Spirits, but in reality, it's a seinen story. Okay, and the story is let's read a little bit of no, it doesn't have anything. Yeah, it doesn't have anything. It just mentions the article. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's make the introduction myself. Well, the story is a quite weird one. Started in 2017, so before the pandemic, and it's still going on. Okay, it's a world a little similar to this, in which suddenly there was surge of power in the world that manifested by the figure of frogs. They basically started raining, and when they started raining, these frogs, speaking about Jagaaaan, of course, spoilers, they started falling down on the city, different cities of Japan. Later on, we discovered that it affected the other parts of the world too, but mostly in Japan. We have that these frogs managed to enter the bodies of some people. And when they did, they provide these people with the particular power of manifest their most inner desire in a monstrosity, mostly because they were consumed by it, and they started simply just um, gnawing and eating people and destroying people around them, as their desires were simply just running rampant as what you will see in a crazy person, and having an outburst in public with a weapon or something like this. Okay, so but basically these powers were like monstrosities that worked as that as weapons. The thing is, they were nonetheless honest desires. They were honest desires from the very beginning. People that had really deep inside of them frustrations that will suddenly, burst out in such a way. If you read a little bit of Freud, you know about his. We also commented about this before, about the division of psyche in the subconscious, the conscious, and the it, and how the it is that basically, that place where you put all those crazy urges. If you are supposed to have a healthy psyche, you are supposed to filter those urges with, different type of behaviors. Not sometimes are not the best of ones, but you who control them. The problem is when your psyche is not in the best, and this awful behavior can burst out in moments that you cannot really control it. So of course, when you have a psychotic break, when you have murderous intent, sudden murderous intent, it's definitely because of a break of that part of your psyche. It is something that is inner, is part of our innermost mental stability formations, right? And that balance between our ego, our super ego, and our it, that particular thing. So in Jagaaaan, you see that it's the it that takes over of these people whose life have been taken over by this frog that got inside of them and made them be that way. So it's not that the frog did that, it was that inside of them. But then you had these other groups of people who had a half grown frog, like the protagonist. And these people managed to manifest their power, but not completely let themselves be controlled by it, because, of course, they were just half of it. And by, of course, chances of the narrative, you have the little owl that explains to the protagonist once he discovers that he has this power, and that the way in which he can keep himself from becoming a complete full-fledged frog demon, well, will be is if he sniffs out the ashes that he can take from the people he kills, those that are fully grown frogs. So I already explained what is the mechanics behind Jagaaaan. Now, what is the interesting aspect of Jagaaaan is not just the whole thing of the dynamics, but it's the fact that, Well, all of us have that. All of us suffer from deep down push feelings, right? These deep push down feelings are, of course, those mostly negative ones that we still hold from the people that are the closest to us, and from them we, build onto to other things that we don't necessarily care in the same way, but we could easily, if we, for example, have an violent outburst that we are capable of hurting someone or something that we care for, well, for sure, we're gonna be way worse with others that we don't care for. So when you got a psychotic break, what happens in the US and with schools, many kids that they just lose it and get their weapon, they get their hands on weapons provided by the easy market of weapons that you have in the US that is just incredible, legal weapons. And then they use these weapons to harm other kids and themselves. Some of them have motivations that are understandable given the conditions. Like, I'm sorry, when I say understandable, I didn't say that I support their outbursts, but they're understandable to produce like this type of seizures in people's personality. And we're speaking about severe bullying. Severe bullying is a really, really bad stuff. And it's a situation that happens a lot. Even if we have had many different initiatives in different parts of the world about our education system not to support and not to allow this type of behavior within their institutions, but this still happens because society, all right? Society works in ways in which bullying is part of the different social dynamics that kids live out in the process of, the coming of age process of school. I was a victim of bullying, not severe bullying, but I was a victim of bullying because of some conditions I had when I was a kid, when I was studying. And like myself, I guess the majority of men that I know have had some type of bullying one way or another. Not severe ones, but those of people that we know, those cases of people that have been bullied that way. We know that this produces scars on people, and these scars, if not treated positively, will have impacts on personality that are terrible. Now, when I mean bullying, I'm not referring to just the typical school type of bullying. There are other different types of bullying, as there is that considered as a type of harassment. And harassment can be presented in ways in which the people that produce it, are not really aware that they are producing it. You can say that you may be helping someone by making sure that this person knows what this person is doing wrong. But the way you do that is demeaning, to say the least. And when that happens, you wound a person. So, yes, if you keep doing that, disregarding the fact that that person have told you, people have told you that you're hurting them, you are bullying that person. Many people have been bullied by parents, relatives, and friends for many years. And because of that, they hide this type of regretful feelings really deep inside of them. And it's a terrible thing, but it happens. Jagaaaan explains this, but not really from the bullying perspective. It goes on simply just the whole society against the individual. All right. So it's like society bullying the individual, and as such, many different individuals have grown to be simply just tamed. But now, the taming thing means that in reality they were wild, they were savages, right? And that's the reason why the frog clicks on with with these people because they have those urges within themselves, like, you know, going on any type of rampant, murdering rampant, stealing rampant, raping rampant, and so on. That happens in Jagaaaan. So of course, it's not a story for kids. It's a singing story, but it's a story that makes us consider a lot of different issues that sometimes we see on people around us because we see people bursting out constantly in the streets. I mean, come on, people that drive have seen this. You, if you drive, have been mad at moments in which you could not really control the words that you said, could sometimes could not even control your actions. You, if you have been in a fight, you know what it means to be angry to that moment in which it ridiculizes you by the situations that it puts you through. Jaga, it's a lot of that with, of course, crazy narrative because it's an entertaining story. So we can read it not just simply for the perspective of the crazy graphics because it has a lot of crazy graphics, and I have to commend the artists of that story. They are awesome, but it's got quite a lot of glorifying work just because, and just simply to say that I like the story because of images. Nah, nah, because there's stuff that I can see in this type of story that it disturbs me in a little bit. But I'm a grown-up man, so I can put up with some gruesome stuff sometimes. And that's the reason why I say Jagaaaan is one of those stories, keeping on the same spirit, but mostly tilting on the side of the bullying thing. And the coming of age, we go with then that manga story that in a time was considered one of the best, most popular mangas. But I guess with time, people grew tired, maybe, I guess. And this is this one. It's called Unordinary. Alright, so Unordinary, written by William H. Doe. Well, no, that's not the real author. The real author is a Korean author. The Korea author, I don't have it. I have only the Doe. I couldn't find the other one. Well, it's not that I couldn't find. I just simply didn't have enough time to look for all the wikis about this. The ones that I found, this one is good enough for basically what I want to explain. So basically, it's a story of this world in which the majority of people are born with abilities to manifest some type of energy or simply just a skill that in reality from the very beginning is simply just portrayed as combat abilities. And because they're used mostly by combat, they are ranked as depending on the functionality, the use, the practicability, and the power of each one of these abilities. It will make one person to become like a full army on themselves, and or a freak of nature, as they call it, or even a natural disaster if they were considered really, really powerful. So, in this story, as it begins with a big problem of giving everybody an ability. So of course you say, well, what's the cool thing about it in reality? What is the hook? The hook is in this story you got this kid, the protagonist, who is really disturbed. That's the best way to say it. His personality in itself is all in shambles. He is a result of a lot of intervention, mental intervention by adults. And in itself, you as an adult, especially me as an educator, this hits really, really hard because we educators have the whole idea of being educators is just to help kids, right? Well, of course, it's a job. You're supposed to get paid by doing a job. But you don't want to do a job in which you simply just look for money and just put everything to the toilet. I mean, flush it away. No, no. You do that job that you want to be proud of. And your job is basically the best of it is when your students are capable of showing you something that, you know, shows that the evidence that you did a good job, right? So this story is really heavy. Let me go back and describe the world of unordinary. You guys have again a world in which everyone is has power, and at the same time, these powers are ranked. And as they rank, of course, society divides people and favors those that have the best ranking. And it begins from school as teachers allow, you know, regular, safe type of competition among students, which is not true. Students tend to keep beating the crap out of each other all the time, and teachers never ever have an intervention on this. Student council, on the other hand, is the one that regulates the beatings, but never stops them. So now you can see a little bit about what happens in the school. Of course, this happens in higher societies, as these are the good schools, because the worst schools, I guess the situation is even worse. Like maybe battle royale style, I don't know, crazy murdering, etc. Well, the thing is that in this society, you got good neighborhoods and you have awful neighborhoods, and those awful neighborhoods they didn't even have security, and people there just lived out of in fear, constant fear. And you can see that these kids, many of the kids that were in these schools were, oh, we got a call now. You gotta pick it up. Right. Okay, people from Instagram, I'm really sorry. Give me a second, another time. Sorry. I'm referring to the people of Instagram, and I'm really sorry that this happened. As you know, we have a double streaming, so bear with us. Now, continuing, what happened? Alright, thank you. So, back with the people from Instagram. Oh my god. Quite an accidental one tonight. Okay, so, we're back on Instagram. So, we didn't say much. We were mentioning in Unordinary, the world Unordinary. And again, spoilers for the story. In this world, you can see that the good kids, the kids that are raised in good schools, right? Terrible to say the good kids like that, are originally prone to, you know, becoming one day sometimes obviously the leaders of the country. And in the way in which they see themselves are leading armies, leading people by justice. Well, not exactly. Actually, I made a mistake there. The ideology of the world was basically just simply competition. Like, you know, try to be the best, or simply just get yourself in the good side of the best. Right? That's basically how it works. So, a little bit like an exaggeration of real world in reality. But with this thing of a superpower thing. Now, you got that, right? And you have one particular event produced by a book made by an author that was, in this case, an anonymous author that happens to be the father of the protagonist. This book was meant to help his kid, psychologically speaking, and that's what I was referring to, how heavily I got it as I became an educator and I saw And I've seen so much of the results that, not the results, but the influences that we educators plus parents plus others have on how kids form their personalities. And I know that there's some type of intervention that is nocive, that is terrible, that is toxic. This story has incredibly a lot of that, of toxic behavior by authorities, by people that were supposed to be given the right and duty, because it's both, of educating young individuals, and they simply just made them all. They made them awful. They simply just made them awful. This the protagonist of this story is like that. It's one of these kids that is being done so wrong, mentally speaking. Um, in this society, as I said before, the idea was to just compete and become the best, or simply be the friend of, or the best friend of that one that's the best. His parent, on the other hand, always taught him values of friendship and honor. And of course, that was against the ideology that kids in his school, grade school, when he was a kid, had. And of course, he clashed against them because originally he did not develop his power very late. As he didn't develop his power, he was being bullied by all the other kids. There were a group of other kids, that few of them, that were like him, and as being the victims as a group, they tried to protect each other. Little by little, they developed their own powers, but he was one of the last ones until he managed to make it at the end. But in the process of making it until the end, there was this social aspect of the story that was constantly expressed. And there was the fact that comments, impressions that people have upon others have a lot of effect on how you reaffirm your personality, or you simply just destroy it. When you develop criteria, especially about that, about those things that you're supposed to know, those things that you want, eh, the history of psychoanalysis tells us that we use our references through our superego. The superego that is, of course, the one that is formed by the authorities that we learn from, our parents first, all teachers, and so on with everybody else. Then we have that if we admire these people, we copy many of those things that they like as we like them. Later on, of course, we change because we're supposed to develop our own criteria. But we begin by that because we don't know what to like. We simply just know what these people are presenting us. So, of course, like for example, I remember me as a kid, I remember that most of the music that I was presented to was awful. So when I got to admire someone in music, it was someone that was listening to a type of music that I later on became attracted to, and that was, of course, rock. So I could not really say that, yeah, I love rock because naturally I was driven to it. No, of course, I had the type of reference. And like that, I could say that almost everything that I like in my life, I had a real reference of someone that for some reason gave me a good push to that thing that I like. Today, I mentioned before that cinema is not the biggest thing that drives people to want, as what Shishek was referring to in the beginning of this video. If you have to consider today's generation, it's a dog. I think it sounds right. So, if you have to consider today's generation, it's not the case of movies, it is the case of games, or this that we're reading. just today. Okay, comics, video games mostly because in video games you as the spectator are not just simply a spectator. You can control the reality, and that has an incredible value. Adds an incredible value to whoever uses this as a form of entertainment. That's the reason why kids can spend hours and hours on end playing video games with no reason for them to stop unless education after intervening. And it is the reason why video games are the main reason why academics today are so bad in male students. That according to Zacarias Zimbardo, this recognized professor that spoke about in this case the songs of time for how we perceive uh, reason and knowledge. Going back to Zizek and the ideology that we all project is of course being immersed in the same media and is of course criticized in the same media. And this story actually aims at that. Like it refers back and forth to the power struggle that it so happens to be what destroys the psyche of this little kid. It begins by him, being isolated and alienated because he didn't develop his power too late. And once he does, he gets alienated because he becomes too powerful. So much that the kids that were his friends become like his enemies at the end because they don't see him as someone that is trying to defend himself as he was supposed to do. Instead, he sees himself. They see him. Sorry, as one of the other bullies, and in fact, a worse type of bully. So there is a breach that it happens simply because of misunderstandings. That misunderstandings were fed because of insecurities that were there, lay there because of those things that we said before that people cannot control. And it's so clear that it happens to be a kid, knowing that kids, as you're a kid, you're not supposed to be emotionally mature to learn how to deal with strong emotions like this. Like, first you're being attacked because you don't have powers, and suddenly you have power. And you start to take revenge upon those that attack you. When are you supposed to stop? Right? Apparently, he didn't really learn that from the very beginning. And that's when the worst thing happens. He gets re-educated by an adult that simply just washed his brain by convincing him of how villainous he was in reality if he ever had to stand up for himself and use his power. Of course, in that process was when his father tries to do the opposite, tries to counter the ideology by making this book. Never he didn't he know that didn't he sorry he never really knew that this book, the reason for him doing this, was going to produce another type of effect, like other people who have access to this book and other people who start taking stances against the ideology of the moment. And there were a few of them that were kids, students, that disregard their position in life as being class A citizens and started going out there and defending regular citizens or lower class citizens that didn't have access to justice. And they became the vigilants, the protectors, the mass ones, because of course this was illegal in this type of world. And the best of them actually paid by being killed. And when that happened, of course the book was banned, and of course, legally speaking, vigilantism was rendered to be illegal. And people that did any type of vigilantism was not supported, but instead attacked by the movement. You see how complex this world is? But in the same time, think about what happens in many social situations in which kids today are led to think that their urges are supposed to be wrong. but they don't get a real explanation, or they don't get a real orientation of how to deal with those urges. Instead, they simply get demolished by society all class rules. And these society all class rules, of course, led by authorities of today, tend to be too weak with the constitution of how this works, because they want to be, still lead kids by using these rules, these institutions, the institutional form of working, like discipline, social discipline, but they simply give in to the protest of kids that you know sometimes even ridiculize the principle behind the same disciplinary actions by their own logic, by saying that, hey, why is this necessary? Okay, things like, I don't know, wearing uniforms, let's say routinary uh, routinary behavior in different open and public spaces sometimes are tried to be reinforced. These things are being reinforced by people that don't really have much faith in those things. Newer generations simply just doubt them, and then we begin to do, between different generations, a game of make believe, okay, that make everybody hypocritical about how things are supposed to work. This happens in many countries in Latin America, and I guess it happens in many other countries in the world. And that's sort of the criticism behind this story, Unordinary. It's really heavy to read, but it's once you start reading it, you get hooked from the very beginning to the very end. Next story will be Shamo. And Shamo is speaking about misguided desire. Shamo is terrible with this. Shamo is the story written by Iso Hashimoto and illustrated by Kyo Tanaka, but never finished by them because one of them died, and it had to be finished by another person. This manga inspired a film from Hong Kong, but it wasn't really exact as it's supposed to be. But anyway, this story is very strange, to say the least. It's the story of a kid that is imprisoned at young age in juvenile imprisonment because he allegedly killed his parents. Now, there is no real confession of him having killed his parents, but there is a constant reminder of a toxic relationship triangle between parents and sister. And he, as a naive young kid that needs to survive no matter what, one of the first drives is, of course, fear, and the second one is resentment to the neglect that he considers have received by society. He has been a kid that for some reason was put in prison. That's how he perceives himself. Suddenly is a victim of everyone because, tiny kid coming from a upper middle class family, never really did anything physically, was even considered a genius at school, dedicated frame, dedicated figure, etc., etc. Was, of course, the worst type of match of person to be, junior in prison. And he suffered all the worst type of things that happen to kids that go to prison in such circumstances. So, at the same time, he happened to find right there one person that began the process of him transforming into what he became later on. And this guy happened to be an ex-mercenary, an imprisoned ex-mercenary that was there for attempting murdering the president for the time that he was that guy was a president, because it's been years since the guy is being imprisoned. And this guy managed to teach this kid a type of karate that is dirty as crazy. That first move is simply just going for your vital organs, as your testicles and your eyes. And from then on, this kid begins to twist his morals according to the powers that he's bestowed with, because of course that's what he was taught. I mean, to use a type of self-defense method that was deadly and that was treacherous, understanding that he was supposed to use it in places like prison. But from the very beginning, he never really accepts that he did murder his parents. And learning these techniques just simply made him focus much more in the way in which he portrayed himself as a victim all the time. And as a victim, he justified every violent, awful move he ever made. This story is extremely violent. I do not recommend this story for kids. I strongly recommend it for people older than 17, because you need to see the process in which this young man goes through and understand from all perspectives possible that this man is wrong, and it's never alright. It's never okay. He is wrong, but you suffer his pain. It's genius for an author to be capable of conveying so much with a story like this. But at the same time, it is one of those things that you consider about art that is heavy, because it's not comfortable. You don't really side with him at all, but you cannot really go against him because he's the protagonist, right? Sir Alberto, thank you for coming. So it's one of those stories I recommend for those people that do take their time to build up a mood to read something that would give them more than just experience of, reading something or watching something with lots of action. But if you really want to learn about how deep the human spirit goes when it is simply just going, but at the same time how wrong that human spirit goes, because the story is truthful in that way. As a person that chooses to do things as that person does will obviously live that type of life that this person lives. And this story is fiction, but it looks more like a documentary to me if you actually consider everything that I just mentioned. So, strong recommendation. And with that, we said the last story for today, that is, well, it's not a story, it's just simply one character, Eren Jaeger. If I have to just simply conclude with the idea of what is a misplaced desire, Eren Jaeger is the best example. When Eren Jaeger began his journey as a hero, he said that he wanted to kill every one of them, the one that put them behind the prison. And he managed to do just that. He kills every one of them. He actually kills most of the world. Why? We know that what he did helped the people that he wanted to help, but to what end? What is it the world for you when everybody else is dead? That is the lesson of Attack on Titan. Sometimes, yes, you can be strong enough to destroy your enemies. But to what end? Sometimes be, capable of doing peace agreeing onto what apparently is unagreeable. Well, just for the sake of peace, that sometimes is better. Actually, that's supposed to be the best thing because we are humans. We live in this planet together. Sometimes we live with those people that we don't like, we don't want to, but they are there, and we destroy them. It's gonna be only us. But the world cannot just be simply just for us because we cannot do everything. We need other people, and that's a very strong thing to learn with the case of Attack on Titan and what happens with this man, Eren Yeager, and his whole uh, great adventure of destroying the whole planet and everyone against them because you cannot really support that type of idea. You cannot. Even if everyone seems to be against you, you can't. You cannot destroy the world to accommodate the world for you, for your own sake. So you need to consider every little aspect of the things that you don't like about the world. And then consider yourself properly and see what is it that is worth keeping. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, you are simply wrong. You're seeing it from a worst perspective ever. And that's why we mentioned that our perspective sometimes can be misplaced. We think that what we want is actually the best for us, but it's not true. Let's say, just an example, we don't find any friend and we are isolated, alienated, and we go online trying to connect with someone. And when we find one group of people that start hitting us, back, start saying that they care, etc., etc., and they say, well, the only thing that you need to do is just become a Nazi like us. Are you gonna become a Nazi just because the Nazis are the only people that are your friends? But it happens to be a reason why some people actually become Nazi. This happened to many young Frenchmen that became part of the Islamic nation, that group of people that were against the U.S. and against Lebanon and many other countries of that region. And they held an incredible war for years. Some of them are still there fighting. Most of them were, destroyed. They killed a lot of innocent people, and some of them were recruited as innocent people too. Why does this happen? It happens because people resonate to this dark feeling out of the emptiness of their brains, out of not really putting anything possibly positive in those heads. Some people use religion to do that, but we all know that religion is another ideologic conundrum. For some people, it works, and I applaud for those people to keep being religious because it helps for you. And if that allows you to sleep well and not really destroy the life of other people, not being merciful, toxic, well, great for you. But apart from that, apart from religion, you got to grow up as an individual. You have to wake up, kind of like George Carlin used to say, "Wake up and see the world how for what it is," and begin to be aware of yourself, become self-aware of your insecurities or your improper ways to fit in, to get yourself together with the rest of the people. Once you realize that you can change a couple of things that will allow you to make at least a couple of friends, you need them. You need friends, but real friends, not Nazis as friends or terrorists. You need real people that could tell you in your face that the world is not just all twisted. And because of that, you get the chance to actually grow up. These stories are great to describe this type of path, the type of path that is necessary for an individual that wants to, not live an awful life. Okay, they show you that by destroying the life of the MC, by putting the MC throughout all these crazy situations, awful situations, mostly produced by themselves. These stories are what what Aristotle used to say about the Greek the Greek tragedy, that it was meant to educate you, to produce some type of education to those people that are watching. So you can say that this is modern drama, and modern drama with all its connotation. These four stories, I recommend you strongly to check them out from this perspective. And with this, we are concluding tonight's video. We are really thankful for all these people that managed to be tonight here on Instagram. We had three times, three moments, but it was the same show all over. We got the last person, Mr. Alberto. Mr. Alberto, thank you for your fidelity. We got other people also on YouTube, and we're really happy for all the people that managed to make it tonight. And we obviously are using this time to tell you guys what is the whole purpose of these sessions that we constantly have Friday after Friday. Remember, the whole purpose of this is for A-létheia to promote how is it that we work in the Speak Up Club. As the Speak Up Club will help you master your level of English by simply just speak, be there and speak yourself up. All right, so come join us in our sessions with the other participants of the Speak Up Club, in which you can actually learn how to do that, how to learn English by simply speaking. All right, like I just did, putting in practice many different things, tricks and more, let's say, techniques that are necessary at the moment in which you need to express yourself. And expressing yourself in front of the camera, not an easy thing. So, if you are interested in participating in the Speak Up Club, leave us a comment here on Instagram or YouTube. We will be contacting you and telling you, what hours we can work with you and everything that we conveys. And for those people that are simply just interested in checking us out in the media, do so, because we will not stop anytime soon. So every Friday is when our lives come out. Check, those lives are going to be saved on YouTube, our channel, and on Instagram, as long as Instagram allows it to. With that said, if no other people wants to make any comments, we're off. Thank you, people, for being here tonight. So let's say bye first to the people of Instagram. Bye, Instagram people. Yes. And now for the people